I'm Tyler Pruitt. I'm here with Dan Phillips. It is the 8th of May, and we're here to talk about the beginning of technology in Arkansas. I guess kind of the main thing is, how would you describe how you got into technology?
Through the back door.
All right. What do you mean by that?
I'll kind of back up and say my first introduction to technology was in 1969.
Okay.
And it was Introduction to Computers in the business school.
All right.
And we had to punch our own cards and write our programs in Fortran. And I did that. Luckily, I had learned how to type, so I had a leg up, it felt like. But then my next class, either later that year or the next year, we no longer did punch cards. We had a direct online terminal. And it was IBM Selectric typewriter that you could either type on it. It had this cable about this big around that came out of the back of it that hooked it directly to the computer. And I thought, man, that's the neatest thing I've ever seen, that you can type directly into the computer instead of having to type punch cards. But I got a degree in marketing and I wanted to be a buyer. And I went to work for a retailer and did that for 3.5, almost 4 years, and decided, well, I want to do something different. And luckily, back then, there was a organization between what we call data processing and the business. And the head of this organization said, anybody that comes out of merchandising, I want first shot at them. So I went and talked with him. And it just intrigued the heck out of me. So I went to work in merchandise information systems, managing replenishment. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I did it for almost 5 months. But I remember, and it still sticks to me to this day, one of the guys that I worked with was Michael Bobbitt. And Michael was implementing a change in the replenishment system at this retailer, and it was an entry screen, and he said, you have to make sure that you edit the data properly. So in the data field, he asked me to help him test his program. In the department number field, which was a 3-digit numeric only field, I had to key every key on the keyboard, upper and lower case, so that it would only accept numerical input. And he said, if you do anything in that 3-digit field other than numerics, and if it doesn't give you an error, we got a problem. And I didn't find a problem with it. It would only accept numerics. And that's just stuck with me this whole time. The degree of attention to detail that you had to use every key on there, plus use the shift key to make sure that it would recognize everything and it would only allow numeric input. I wish we had been writing systems that thoroughly for everything that we do. So about 6 months after that, I was given an opportunity to work in the data center. And I got to see punch cards again. Because back then, at this department store, when you made a purchase on the company credit card, they put a sales check in the register, and it printed what you bought, and it took an imprint of your credit card. And every day, every one of those sales transactions would come to the downtown store, and we had to key punch the date, the store number, the register number, and the dollar amount of the transaction, and the credit card. And that's how we settled the day's business for cash, check, and credit. And at the end of the month, when you got your credit card statement, you got a copy, a 80-column punch card of every transaction. So we had to key punch those cards, and we had to sort all those cards, and then mail them every month. So the biggest mistake I've ever made in the business is I had a complete day's business. It was 2 weeks before Christmas at a retailer. People had to physically read that card because it wasn't punched, and you'd put it in a tray, and you'd put in a card that is called gang punching, and you would gang punch the store number and date. And then it went, and you actually key punched the dollar amount and credit card. So these had been hand sorted, and was going in for us to punch all the stuff so we could start the work. And I was pushing the cart with an entire day's business up into the computer room on a ramp and I fell off the ramp and dumped all the transactions on the floor. And it took us 3.5 days to sort it out. The second, but the most amazing thing was, that was the 2 weeks before Christmas, and the first week in February, one of the programmers came to me and he said, Dan, you're the manager, and I have a highly confidential program that I have to run. This is the profit sharing account for all of the associates of our company, and it's got their social security number, their annual salary, and how much money is in their profit sharing account. And he said, I have pulled out all of the cards of the people that have retired or left the company, and I have put at the front of this all of the people that have joined the company since last year. And the manager has to sort this because it's got confidential information. And he says, so you go sort this and then give it back to me. So I went and sorted it. And of course, the first thing I wanted to do was to check to see if it was accurate, to see if it was in numerical sequence based on Social Security number. So I looked at the first card, and the first Social Security number was 8. It was 000000008. I thought, I got a problem. So I looked at the second one. It was 11. The third one was 13 or 14, and the fourth one was 22. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a problem. The fifth one was like 121, 06, 1159, something. I'm going, what is this? I went back to the programmer and I said, what are these first 4 Social Security numbers? They're a single or 2-digit number. And he says, oh yeah, that's those ladies that work down there in the fabric department. And one of the buyer trainees that I'd worked with was working in that area, so I went to her and I said, Betty, tell me about these 4 ladies. And she says, well, let's just go out and talk to them. All 4 of these ladies were in their late 70s to early 80s. They are all born and raised in Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas were issued the first Social Security numbers in the continental United States, and they had some of the first Social Security numbers ever issued. 8, 11, 13, and 22. And I thought, my gosh, they used to ask you for your Social Security number for your ID at a checkout. You'd walk up and say, what's your Social Security number? I said, 8. And just to see what the reaction. The next year, I had to go back and do the same thing again, and I looked, and those 4 ladies had retired. And that was so interesting to me that was literally multiple generations of people. Here were some of the first 4 people in the United States that got a Social Security account, and they worked at that department store. So that was kind of fun then, and then I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas in 1980 and went to work for Dillard department stores, and went from punching cards to running some of the most sophisticated data processing around at the time. Dillard's was the first company to run electronic point of sale from IBM. They were running some of the first online transaction-based systems at the time, and it was kind of amazing to me, but it said a lot because the president of the company had taken his master's, and his master's thesis was integration of technology in a retail store environment. So to kind of take a leap, if you will, in technology from running punch cards, which were the 20s and 30s, to literally jumping into the 80s and 1980, and that was an amazing leap in technology to me. So that was fun. I've kind of seen a lot of it, missed some of it.
All right. Just in case you haven't noticed, trying to actually keep my voice off the tape as much as possible.
Yep.
Let's see. How long did you work at Dillard's department store?
I worked for Foley's department stores for almost 8 years.
Okay.
Out of college, I was recruited off campus at the University of Arkansas. And then I worked for Dillard department stores for 10 years. And I've been at Walmart for a little over 17 years.
What would be, I guess, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but your absolute most exciting moment that would have to do with technology? it can be after 1985.
Mm-hmm. I guess that I go back to some of the first experiences that I had when I left merchandising, and that was with Foley's in Houston, Texas. I did that replenishment job for a while, and before I actually worked in the data center, another gentleman that was in my buyer training class that had taken a similar move to me, that we both kind of said we want to do something different. We were both managers in a furniture reservation center at Foley's, and the stores, when they sold a piece of furniture, they would call our reservation center and reserve a piece of furniture, and our database was on punch cards, and we had folks that sat there, and if they would tell them this is a sofa style number, whatever color, whatever, and they would go to a card deck and physically pull out the card that identified that piece of furniture in the warehouse, and that's how we identified it. But we had to have at least some sort of information about what was the inventory, how was it broken down by, either department or category. So how many sofas versus chairs did we have? So every Sunday afternoon we would load up all of those cards into trays, put them on a truck, drive them to the downtown store, and read in all the cards and come up with our inventory, because it was not a real live. That our database was physically on punch cards. It was not in a computer, and therefore we had to read it, and all we did was read it and produce a report. You didn't save the information, you just processed it. And I'd been there about 3 weeks, and I said, have you all ever had a wreck with that truck and lost the information? I didn't think of it in terms of a database at the time, but in effect, you could have a wreck on the freeway and lose your database. And they said, we had never thought about that. That's kind of dangerous. So we started up a project that in about 4 months, we implemented what was called a remote job entry station, one of the first, I think at least in the state of Texas, that instead of driving that database across town on Sunday, that we had a remote terminal connected via phone line that we would read the cards in and feed the computer downtown. And it was the first time that we had a remote interface to the computer. So today that's just taken for granted, but back then nothing was connected to the computer downtown. It was standalone. It ran by itself. And in some cases it didn't even house the data. It took data in and processed it and produced a report, but didn't save anything. Just literally processed it and printed output.
I know I said that we were going to try to, keep it, before 1985, but since you're going on your history, I'd like to, hear kind of, the rest of Dillard's and on into Walmart and since then.
Okay. I was in operations and store systems at Dillard's in the 80s, and that was a time of consolidation in the department store industry. So I was there 10 years, and in 10 years we acquired 16 companies. So they were as small as a 2-store chain in San Angelo, Texas, or as large as 73 stores, which was Macy's in Kansas City. And we took them, integrated them into the Dillard's structure, put the Dillard's name on the building, put our tickets on all the merchandise at some point, but we had to convert all of the information, because on the first day that you operated, you had to be able to sell the merchandise. So we came up with a process that the stores were closed on Sunday back then, that the store would close on Saturday and cease to exist as the old company, and would open Monday as a store of Dillard department stores. And that was a time of a lot of learning and trial and error and a lot of mistakes, but it was also a lot of fun. The team got tightly bound together because of the challenges that you had to do, the hard times and the fun times. So we did a lot of acquisitions during that time frame. I came to Walmart in the fall of '89 because I wanted to get into applications development. I'd been in operations most all of my career, and I wanted to develop systems, and that's how I started off at Walmart. So I was helping lead the replacement of our proprietary store computer with an open-based system. And there were really not very many open-based systems in late 89, 1990, so that we were literally introducing the first Unix systems at Walmart. So we were installing Unix in the beginning in the summer and fall of 1990 and went through 91 and into 92. And think about that. So we were having to rewrite everything into a new language, which was Micro Focus COBOL C, Micro Focus COBOL, and some C. And it was on a proprietary language from a Series 1 back then. So anything that we did new, we had to write twice. We had to put it on the old system, we had to put it on the new system. And we had to write everything from the old onto the new. So the analogy is changing the flat tire on your car driving down the freeway. So that was fun. And it was some tough times, but fun times. And I was thinking in the summer of 1991 that we'd rolled out to about 50 stores and we had about 1,400 to go. And we were having some challenges along the way, and I got back from vacation, and my manager called me in and said, Dan, you're no longer on the rollout of the Unix system. This was a Monday morning. He said, we're going to have a press release tomorrow that we're going to announce a joint venture partnership with the largest retailer in Mexico by the name of Cifra, and you're going to head up the project that you're going to convert our Sam's Club business to run in Mexico City, converted from dollars to pesos and from English to Spanish, and you can't use anybody in our division, and you got 6 weeks, hurry. So myself and 2 other managers were Walmart International ISD Associates number 1, 2, and 3. And we opened our first Sam's Club on December the 6th, 1991 in a suburb of Mexico City called Polanco. And luckily, it takes longer to get a store ready than it does to convert a system. So we had about 5 months and we opened that store. So that was fun. I supported the Sam's business for about 5 years and then have kind of worked my way through a lot of Walmart information systems, through the infrastructure side of the business, the development side, and have had a lot of fun doing that. I've met a lot of people. And I think the thing that I like best about that is that I've got some familiarity with a lot of things within what we do. And if nothing else, I at least know somebody to go talk to if I got a question or if I have a need from the team. So that was fun.
All right. What are, I guess, the systems that Walmart's currently running?
It would probably be easier to say what we're not running instead of what we are running. We run everything. We've got mainframes. We've got massively parallel systems like Teradata. We've got Unix. We've got Windows. We've got Linux. We write in .NET, WebSphere, COBOL, Assembler. We run on IMS, DB2, Informix, Oracle, SQL. I can't think of a database that we don't use. I can't think of a language we don't code in unless somebody uses Fortran still. But we started with C, we went to C++, we use C#. We just had a seminar today on the new version of .NET from Microsoft. So when you got an organization this big that embraces open standards, you're literally across the board.
Now, what were you using whenever you first got to the company?
They were running mainframes, and they had some of the first servers back then that was called an RT, and we were running our pharmacy applications on that, and that was kind of pre-Unix, but it really wasn't Unix, and it really wasn't a PC, but it was kind of a server if you think of it that way, and we were getting rid of Series 1s. So we went from a proprietary unique system to an open standard that we could run on multiple flavors of anybody's servers, whether it's Intel based or RISC based. And we intentionally did that to say we had 9 vendors that we looked at for running their hardware, and we said we got to be able to run it on anybody's hardware. So we still compile programs today on a RISC-based or on an Intel-based processor. So we still got lots of mainframes. We've got a whole lot of data warehouse on Teradata. We've got tens of thousands of Unix servers and hundreds of thousands of PCs.
And when was the first time you saw a mainframe?
I think the first time I saw a mainframe was with my dad at his company in the early 60s. I grew up in Fort Smith, and my dad worked for the natural gas company, and I went down there one time. I didn't know at the time, but your gas bill was part of an 80-column punch card. And when you made your payment, you tore part of it off, and they literally, that's how they knew who you were, because your account number was in there, and they knew how much your payment should be. And we went down there on Saturday to do something, and I saw this great big box over there, and people were reading the cards in. They were processing payments from customers. So I was 12 or 13, 62 or 63. So that would have been an IBM 360. I just didn't know what I saw at the time.
How important would you say the mainframe is today, and do you see an end to it anytime soon?
I've been around long enough that the mainframe has been rumored to go away at least 5 times in my lifetime. And every time someone says it's going to go away, you see a lot of press around it. People start talking about how do we get off the mainframe, but within a period of time they come back. So I don't see mainframes ever going away. At Walmart, we're looking at running Linux on a mainframe, and that just extended the life of the mainframe beyond my lifetime. So when we're running Linux on a mainframe, mainframes will be here as long as I am. But even without Linux, mainframes are going to be around for a long time. They're not for everybody. They're for large organizations that have lots of data that they need to process in a highly available environment. And at Walmart, we have a very highly available environment. We have to, because people and customers, when they check out, they expect that cash register to work, their transaction to be authorized, their check to be taken, their credit card to be taken, their debit card to be taken, or their shopping card to be taken. And that's all gets processed through the mainframe.
So you do see, the role, IBM seems to have played a fairly large role in the history of computing. Do you see them, now that their proprietary stuff is, essentially going away, do you see them, or where do you see them going, or could you comment on that at all?
We almost saw IBM go away in the 90s because they had lost their way. And they changed leadership in the 90s. Lou Gerstner pulled them back up and made them successful. Sam Palmisano is taking that to a new level. So the IBM of the 50s to the 80s, who were the predominant hardware and software company, IBM today is a solutions-based, and they're selling more services year over year than they typically will. It's services is still not all of the more than half of their business, but it continues to grow each year. So I still see IBM doing the same thing. Every year that I can recall, IBM acquires more patents than any other technology company in the world. So they are still a major research facility, a think tank. They invent stuff at a level that most companies still do not approach and may never approach, but they also sell software, and they also do a lot of services business.
I know, now I've got myself stuck. Let's see. I guess with the transition to Unix that you had, what was your, first thought of, a transition to more of an open system versus this closed system that, worked?
Well, for the longest time, we didn't have a choice. What you bought was closed. Because if you bought a DEC computer, it was unique to DEC. If you bought an IBM computer, it was unique to IBM. And there was no open standard, and there was no incentive to be an open standard. Because If the company had you on their platform, why would they want to spend time or money allowing you to go to somebody else's platform? So there was a natural barrier based on a market-based economy that says, if I've got you, why would I want to give you up? But the fact is, business and customers said we got to have an open environment because the cost of computing is becoming too much, and we can't stay in this closed environment and afford to do what we need to do. The fact is, we would not have what we have today anywhere on the planet if we didn't have open systems. The internet would not exist without open systems. The voice communications, voice over IP, we wouldn't have that without open systems. With open standards that says you develop to some standard and now the hardware becomes a commodity. So that's really the difference. The hardware was the premium, earlier in my career, and today it's the services or the software. And today you buy anybody's hardware, write your software or buy your software, but now more and more you got to have somebody's help to be able to implement it or change it or improve it.
You see maybe that transition happening again with the proprietary versus open source?
Yeah, because open source, it's been happening and it will continue to grow. That I think of that as pervasive computing. Why would I want to write something if I could just go get somebody else's and make a few changes and run my business? Because the competitive environment was I didn't want someone to run my software in the past. And today it's not the fact that you can run someone's software, it's the integration, it's the focus on the customer, it's how do I differentiate myself. In the past we differentiated it with software, today we differentiate it with services. I think I read recently that the United States economy in the past couple of years finally passed the fact that more than half of the commerce in the United States comes from services. So that's the big thing. Services will continue to grow in our economy. But at the same time, we can't give up the ideas and the creativity of inventing new technology, hardware or software, inventing new communication protocols or methods like wireless or Web 2.0, or the complete integration of everything into a cell phone so that you can listen to music, know where you are on the planet, communicate with voice or data, take a picture or watch television, all on one device.
I know I said I was going to keep us before 1985, but let's see. I guess could you describe more in depth kind of your experience with punch cards?
I've got a bunch of blank ones at home, but I still like to write notes on them because they're kind of stiff so you can write on them and they fit in your pocket real well. The person that invented punch cards was Herman Hollerith, and he called them magic fingers. And he figured out that if you could punch a hole in a piece of stiff paper and pass that over what he called magic fingers, which were sending electrical impulses through a small needle, that when the needle touched that hole, it would send an impulse. And I think it was the 1932 census, or in the 20s or 30s, was the first times that punch cards were used. And he was a visionary beyond his time. There's a lot of technology in a punch card, but it looks awful simple. If you think about it, the magnetic stripe on your credit card is in the format of an 80-column punch card. So it's still, think of that, with what he had with 80 columns, I don't know how the 80 columns came about, but the same format that's in there is the same format from a data structure standpoint that's in a barcode on a piece of product or that's in the mag stripe on your credit card. So think about how that came about. The analogy I would give is with radio frequency identification chips. That technology was invented in 1938. And the first time RFID was used was in Great Britain during World War II. And they put RFID chips on Allied aircraft because the British and the Allied forces could not tell the difference between an enemy aircraft and an Allied aircraft. So by putting RFID chips on the planes, they knew which planes to shoot at and which ones not to shoot at. So it's been around since 1938, yet we're still debating the benefit of RFID chips. My badge at Walmart has a RFID chip in it. And we've had these kind of badges for 10 plus years. But I always kind of come back to the punch card and what did that do? And I didn't realize it so much in my lifetime. That's how you paid your gas bill. That's how you paid your electric bill. In the 70s, that's how you got your bill from Foley's department stores. In some cases, that's how you got things back from the U.S. government. If you got your refund checked on your income tax, it was actually the shape and size of an 80-column punch card. So there is more things that the punch card has to find in our life than we may ever know.
I guess, how would you compare the size of technology back, 30, 40 years ago compared to the size things have become now?
The size is relative, because the physical size is about the same, but it's what you have inside of it that's different. I remember in the early 80s at Dillard's, we ordered a memory upgrade for our mainframe computer. It was a 370 model 158, and we ordered 256 kilobits of memory, and it was $1.2 million. And it came in a shoebox. Now, so how much is 256K? It's less than what comes on a PC today. You can buy a 2 gigabit memory chip at Walmart or any other place for less than $100. Yet in the early 1980s, you could only get 1/4 of a megabyte for $1 million. So the size, it's become the density. How much can you store?
Yeah, 256K is what they're putting directly on processors now, if not more.
Well, the fact is, our microwave oven at home has more than 256K of memory in it.
I guess as things have shrunk, how do you, where do you think, or how far do you think that the chips will go? Do you think it will be, we'll start seeing maybe more proliferation of implants in people, or?
I don't think it'll go that far for implants, although people are putting RFID chips in their pets. And that's a good idea. If you lose your pet, you can find it. Or they can find you. In other words, if someone finds your pet that you have an RFID chip in them, they can find out who you are, and they can contact you and find your lost pet. I think that's a good thing. But what's going to happen with it? I think it will be something that we can't comprehend. I have an article I was looking at here the other day. And this is from Arkansas Democrat Gazette, dated March the 26th. And the title is, IBM aims for super fast video downloads. So today, if you want to download a DVD movie, it'll take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. But a DVD movie is somewhere around 6 to 9 gigabytes. But a high definition movie is 25 gigabytes. And I'll read you this. It says, it can take an hour or more to load a full-length feature movie today. In the near future, it could take a second. IBM today plans to unveil a new type of processor technology it claims can move data such as video at a super fast 160 gigabits per second. So that says you could download a high definition movie, let's say it's in 5 seconds. That means that from the time you decided to buy it and download it, it would be downloaded before you saw that FBI screen complete on the movie. So tell me if our personal viewing habits and entertainment might not change. That if I could download a complete high definition movie and watch it whenever I wanted to watch it, didn't have to store it, and can just watch it. If I want to store it, fine. But if I just wanted to watch it once, and I could decide right now to do it and download it and watch it on my TV set, think of how entertainment as we think of it today will change. So I think that's just an example. By the way, this goes on to say that this is over the broadband internet as we know it today. Does not change how we would do DSL or broadband internet. It's just how they would get the data to move over that same size pipe, which is amazing. I was talking with some friends. In my home, we finally have 2 PCs. I have a wireless network, and I have ripped all of my CD music onto my PC, and I've ripped it at lossless so that I keep it at the same quality as the CD is. And I could choose to, reduce and compress it to put onto my iPod or my Windows device. But the fact is, I keep it in 2 formats. I keep it in the Windows format and Apple's iTunes format. So I've got all my music duplicated. And I don't want to lose that. So at my house today, I have 1.4 terabytes of storage. And I don't have any of my home movies converted to digital yet. And I'm going to do that. I have not converted all of our photography, but we've had a digital camera for 3 or 4 years, so for the past 3 or 4 years. But I've got videotape of our youngest daughter, who turned 25 last month, of when she was 22 minutes old on videotape. And it's amazing. And you can still play it because at least that one I have copied to my PC. But I'm going to convert that to DVD. I just converted all of my parents' home movies to DVD, and I gave those out to all of the family at Christmas. And that's stored on there. But so I've got 1.4 terabytes, and half of that is backup and archive. So I've got a 500 gigabyte disk that just backs up everything so that I don't lose it. So I think that's part of what is going to be different about what we do, because I think we're going to think less about storage and the cost of storage. We're going to think less about how do I deliver things, kind of back to the IBM article, and it's going to be what would I like and when do I want it.
You think you could talk more about storage, I guess, as it's progressed through the ages?
Yep. One of the interesting stories is when I was at Dillard's, we had the latest model of storage, which was a 3350 disk drive, and it looked like a washing machine. And I don't remember how much storage that was. It was probably 60 gigabytes, and it was a whole lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we were getting read errors on one of those drives, and it happened twice over a 2-week period of time at about the same time of day. It was between 5 and 5:30, and we were getting errors, and when we got the errors, the mainframe was locking up, and before we could find out what it was, the error stopped and the mainframe freed up and continued to run. But we were at risk of locking up the mainframe and having to reboot it or IPL. And about 2 days later, I was walking through the computer room, and I noticed one of the custodial staff was vacuuming in the computer room, and I followed their extension cord, and they had plugged it into the back of this disk drive. And I went over and said, "Could you turn that off for a minute?" And I said, "How long have you been plugging this in over here?" And they were very nervous. I said, "You're not in trouble." They said, "Well, I was in here one day, and that back door was open, and I noticed it had an outlet, and so instead of me having to drag the extension cord across the floor, I just started plugging it in here." Well, it was creating the errors on the disk drive. But the catastrophic piece of that was that somebody not knowing could have done something to that storage. And in our terms today, that was not a lot of storage, but that was a lot of our storage back then. So storage will continue to get smaller and smaller. About the time you think you can't get it any more dense, you find another way to do it. The latest being Blu-ray from Sony, that now they can store on one disc the size of a DVD or CD, 25 gigabytes on one side, and that's one layer, and if they put 2 layers they can make it 50, and they believe that the density of that can be increased 4 to 10-fold over time. But that's optical storage, that's not magnetic storage, and magnetic storage continues to do the same thing. I read this past week a new chip breakthrough that IBM has found a way to insulate the electrical wires within a chip by surrounding it with airspace. So instead of having silicon around it, which heats up as power goes through it, they figured out a way at a half micron, which is real small, half the size of an atom, that they can put airspace around it, and therefore it's more energy efficient, therefore uses less power, which produces less heat, which consumes less power to cool it, and that this is kind of the next evolutionary step in integrated circuitry. So about the time in technology we think we can't get any more dense or any more faster, somebody figures out something. And we're down below the molecule level at this point, which says at some point, that's what the nanotechnology is about. I mean, nano is so small I can't comprehend it. But if we start producing storage at the nano size, I mean, who knows what you can store.
Have you ever had experience with, I guess, the computers that you could essentially walk in?
Yeah. I remember the first portable computer. It weighed 35 pounds, and it was bigger than a suitcase. But it was a portable PC that ran off of a battery. Versus my laptop is probably less than 7 pounds and thousands times more powerful.
When did you first run into that?
That was the middle 80s. And we had a need.
Yeah.
At Dillard's we had one. And it was significantly more expensive than the other ones were. But we had a need to have a portable computer.
Was that a specific data need, or what was could you say the reason behind that?
It was just, instead of having to sit in the office and do your work, we needed to either go to a store, typically, to do something, and we needed to be able to have a computer when we went to the store. Yeah.
Well, still got about 15 more minutes, Phil. Let's see. Yes, networks over the ages. You said you talked about the first one, being the telephone one. Just talk about how that's, I guess, affected, the business, and also, changed over the years.
Well, it went from being a bottleneck and a barrier to now it is an enabler. In the 80s, a dedicated telephone circuit cost us a lot of money in terms of what we would think of today, because you had to have a solid connection from point A to point B. And then frame relay allowed us to say you just got a connection into this cloud on either end. And point A and point B went into the cloud, and didn't know how they connected, but they got routed properly. And now, with what we do with integrating voice and data over the wide area network or the local area network, now you're mixing voice to be able to make it behave as if it was digital content, but in fact it's analog, but it gets digitized. And who cares? Because you used to have to care and know the difference, and now it's making it so much easier that you can do whatever you want to do. If you would have, I remember I had a cell phone in the late 80s, and it was big and bulky, but for the first time it was at an attractive price compared to what a phone had cost back before that. But now you've got, my cell phone has got a camera and it's got some amount of storage and it's 4 years old and I'm out of date. And I'm seeing the ads on the new ones that it's now your PDA, it's a MP3 player, it's a video player. You can store whatever you want to store on it. You can receive your email, you can talk over it, and you watch TV. I mean, what's next? I don't know. But it's probably going to be fun and neat.
What sort of programming language have you used over the year, had experience with over the year, and how has that changed?
The only one that I know how to program in that I used to was Fortran. So I've never programmed since my sophomore year in college. So I don't write programs. But COBOL was the first thing that I knew. COBOL still runs pervasively all over the world, but it's the traditional legacy systems, and they'll be around for a long time. But everything else is going to be web-based, and it'll be in whatever the neatest, latest language that's on the market today. And it's .NET or WebSphere today, and it used to be Visual Basic, and it used to be other things, and somebody else will have something new, and it'll improve the productivity of a programmer over and above what they're doing today, and people will want to go do it because it's neat and new. But the thing that we should always keep in mind is it's not how you do it, it's what you do. And the customers that use our technology and the customers that use the technology in a Walmart store really don't care what language you used it in. They just want to be able to do what they want to do. And if you'll just keep your eyes on the fact that we need to produce solutions and results, and a lot of times those solutions and results are process changes that take no technology and no software, and focus on what is the result that we need to do, I think we'll all be better off and feel a whole lot better about it instead of making it about technology, because it's not about technology. Who cares?
Have you seen any companies, transform themselves from we've got to get into technology versus we need to provide a service?
The thing that's always amazed me is how many companies I've seen in my career that had a solution in search of a problem. And that to me is some of the biggest things in the change that I've seen in my career. Is you used to have people bringing solutions to you to see if you had problems that this could solve. And what I'm seeing most all, if not all the time today, is what are your problems and how can we help you solve them? And it's not about necessarily using our software, using our hardware, using our solutions, is how can we help you do that? And that's why we're such a service-based economy today. We really don't care how you do it, just help us solve the problems. And that's what we've said at Walmart for a long time, is that I don't care what technology you have, if you'll just come up here and help us understand our business and help us solve problems, that's how we both win. And you'll sell a whole lot more than if you're trying to find the problem that your solution will provide.
Could you, describe, I don't know if you had any personal experience with Sam Wall, did you?
I met Sam a couple of times.
I know it's been said in the early days that he was kind of, he knew he needed the technology, but he was still kind of against it. Do you know anything, any stories, that would go along with that or against that?
I went to work for Walmart the third time I interviewed with Walmart. And the second time I interviewed with Walmart was when I was wanting to move from Texas back to Arkansas. I interviewed at Walmart and Dillard's. And when I interviewed at Walmart, I interviewed with Glenn Hayburn. So Glenn Hayburn was the CIO from the early to mid 70s to the middle to late 80s. And I'll repeat the story that Glenn told for a long time, that during that time frame that he was here, Sam Walton didn't talk about computers. It was one word, and it was damn computers. That he really didn't see the need for the computers to do what they needed to do. But that's kind of an exaggeration. Sam was very tightly focused on expenses. And they cost a lot of money, for computers, and therefore he wanted to make sure that the investment that we made had the payback. So it was a hard sell because it needed to be a hard sell to justify the cost and the money that you would spend with it. I remember the first 3 months that I was at the company, I met Sam in the hallway one day, and the thing that really surprised me at the time is that we all wear our badges at Walmart usually on our shirt pocket or around our neck, and at that point in time in the early 90s you usually had it on your coat pocket or the lapel of your coat. And I was walking down the hall and I saw Sam walking towards me, and as he walked towards me he never lost eye contact, and he said, "Good morning, Dan." And I said, "Good morning, Sam," because everybody called him Sam. And after he had passed me, I said, "He didn't look at my badge. He didn't look at my badge to know my name. I've been here less than 90 days, and Sam Walton knows who I am." So that was kind of good news and bad news in my mind. Really good news that Sam Walton knew who I was. Bad news in my mind is he knows something about me and probably has an expectation at the same time. So that's not bad news, but there's kind of a two-way street within that. And the Sam was always focused on the stores and the associates in our stores. And that's what you always heard him talk about. And I was in about the second or third Saturday meeting that I was in, somebody introduced a new associate, and Sam Walton said, "So where did you work before?" And this person told him where they worked, and he said, "So what do you do at Walmart?" And he explained, and I remember thinking at the time, Sam didn't really like that answer. It really wasn't a good answer. In other words, he didn't answer the question truthfully, honestly. I think he was more saying what he thought Mr. Walton might want to hear. And Sam said, "This is a fast boat, and you better hang on tight because we move real fast around here." And I thought at the time that was Sam's polite way of saying, this is going to be different for you than where you were before. And he was helping him understand that on his first Saturday morning meeting. I remember that my manager at the time had told me when he had joined the company in the middle 80s that his first Saturday meeting he was sitting in the audience, and about halfway through the meeting Sam Walton asked the row that he was sitting in, he says, "Why don't that row right there stand up?" So my manager at the time, but this was years before that, he stood up and he said, "Somebody hand him a microphone," and he said, "I'd like for each one of you to tell me what you did this week to justify your salary." This is a Saturday meeting, Saturday morning between 7:30 and 9 o'clock, and people are being put on the spot. And Sam was good at putting people on the spot. So each one started telling what they did to justify their salary. And he said he got down to the last one, and this associate said, "Mr. Sam, I didn't do enough this week to justify my salary, but I will next week." He said, "Okay." And the context of the story was, just be honest, and if you haven't done what you need to do, say it and improve it next week. And Sam never took issue from what that associate said. "I didn't do enough this week, but I will next week," and Sam believed him. So he believed in people, and it was about people.
How would you say technology has changed the retail business since you've been at 3 different retail companies and had?
It's completely changed customers' view of availability of merchandise. In stock, you have to have it on the shelf when I want it or I won't come back. And technology has helped us solve that, but not resolve that. Second thing is, the customers expect a speedy checkout. I mean, people get looked upon negatively if they're writing a check today, because how long it takes to write the check, other customers are looking at them in an intimidating manner. Especially if you don't start writing the check until after the cashier gives you the total. I mean, because you're making the sign right now is, no, people want to get in and out. They want to get into a store. They want to find it a convenient place. park easily, get in, let me find what I want, and let me get out of there quickly. And if we didn't have technology, we could not do that today. So retail as we know it would not be able to satisfy our expectations of today.
Do you believe retail's changed technology at all?
Absolutely, it's changed technology. It has driven a lot of improvements, and it's driven a lot of integration. Things have come about, and I can't give you a specific example other than to say I believe Walmart helped contribute to the whole open systems concept, because we were one of some of the first few that were embracing and telling our suppliers that we wanted open systems when a lot of the suppliers really didn't want to support it. But the retailers did, because we're such a low-cost business, because our margin on profit is not compared to what manufacturing is. And therefore we had to have lower cost. We couldn't use the non-open systems. So yeah, I think retail has changed technology, both networking, computing, storage, across the board. Across everything, no. But we've contributed, I think, in each one of those. And I wouldn't put it retailing at the top of it, but we're within the top 5 to 10 that influenced a lot of that over the past 20 or 30 years.
I know before I came to Arkansas, there were quite a few people that thought that most people around here still walked around barefoot and stuff like that. How would you say, would you say Arkansas has any effect on technology, and if so, how?
I'd say, first of all, Walmart's had an effect on retail like most people don't realize, because Diller Department Stores has been one of the leading department stores in the business for a long, long time. Walmart has been one of the leaders in the merchandising area. There's a lot of great grocers that have come out of the state of Arkansas, and I've always attributed it to the values of the Midwestern United States. It's work hard, do good, get an education, but work hard, and if you work hard, you'll get return on that. And that I remember talking to Gene Krantz of the initial Mercury and Apollo program, spoke at Walmart Information Systems a few years ago, and he was talking about, John F. Kennedy's challenge to put a man on the moon in this decade. And he said what allowed that to happen was that Congress had passed a bill in the mid-50s funding scholarships to colleges in math and science. That the federal government had recognized we don't have enough math and science college graduates, so the federal government stepped in to do that. And he said the majority of the people that worked for NASA in the late 50s and through the 60s predominantly came out of the Midwestern United States as a result of those scholarships that the federal government had given. And he found that the Midwestern has a culture of hard work and giving people what they want, or maybe a little bit more. So I think Arkansas is known for retailing. But I remember growing up, when I took Arkansas history in junior high school, they said you could put a fence around the state of Arkansas, and it was the only state that could survive by just the natural resources in the state. We were the only state in the United States that had bauxite that you could produce aluminum, as an example. You could still harvest coal, natural gas, oil, agriculture, livestock, manufacturing, water. So literally, we are the natural state, and I think that has made a lot of who we are.